Is the game expansible in that respect? I mean, are you constantly adding new areas to it? Is that or
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly from Mass Effect
yeah?
1 to Mass Effect 2,
Okay.
we say, well, what are the areas that exist that we want to explore further, and what are the new areas that we haven't explored
Yeah.
yet, and what are they going to be? And we plan those out pretty thoroughly. Like you can't just kind of go at it willy nilly. You really
Yeah.
want to say, okay, well, these are core areas that we know people really want to know more about. So there's no point in ignoring them. Let's actually expand
Yeah.
them, or even just let people, like, for instance, the Citadel was like the big space station from the first one, and we know that people love being there, but they don't necessarily want to run around the same space, but they do want to feel like they can return to it. So it's like, well, can we open up something to it? Let them go back to it and see a new spot. And it's a huge. I mean, just in that, like, you could probably tell. You could probably write a game that only took place on the Citadel, or do a whole
Yeah.
comic series.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Just on the Citadel, life on the Citadel, it's huge. It's the size of a city, right?
Yeah.
So you could have it something that takes place there. And what most people have experienced is really just probably 5 or 6 large rooms that are on the Citadel.
Yeah.
That's some of the limitations
Yeah.
of games, and that's why it's exciting to work with the comics, so we can start exploring areas that we haven't touched yet too.
I mean, you feel like the characters are were they fleshed out enough in the video game that it was easy to bring them over to the books? I mean, like, they're 3-dimensional characters at this point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's something that BioWare always does really well anyway. It's like,
Yeah.
our characters are pretty in-depth, especially the main characters. You can find out about their past, you can go on missions with them, and
Yeah.
and they actually have an arc. Like, they're not just static, they'll change over the course of the game. Like, they'll either learn to like you more.
Comic-Con.
Comic-Con, go Comic-Con.
Yeah.
They'll actually change. And I mean, even from Mass Effect 1 to Mass Effect 2, returning characters have an arc.
Yeah.
They've been in there's a 2-year span between the first and second game. And they've gone on and done things. Their lives have changed. Some of them have gotten a little older, a little bit wiser, and stuff like that. And they're still the same character, but they're also growing.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. And I think that's what's interesting about the comic, is that we're doing 2 things. One, working with some existing characters that people should be familiar with, but giving them a chance to expand on that, and then also introducing new characters as well that people will hopefully learn to love as much as the ones in the game.
So real quickly, last question. And I'm assuming a lot of people who are watching this right now probably interested in maybe becoming a video game writer at some point. How does one pursue that path?
Well, for BioWare, it's fairly simple in the sense that we provide the tools. It's what we want people to do is use, even though it's older now, we use the Neverwinter Nights toolset because it actually allows for creating I was talking about the non-linear dialogue earlier. That's really the main reason we use it. It's not that we want you to buy our game, and there is, I believe, a free version you can use now. But just to show that you can write non-linear dialogue, which is compelling and interesting, tells a story, but lets the player feel like they're in control. That's the big thing. That's one of the big hurdles. It doesn't matter how good of a writer you are. If you don't get non-linear dialogue, you just don't get it.
Yeah.
Right? And that's one of the challenges. So we get people to submit modules. Sometimes they're full-blown modules where they've done the scripting themselves. Sometimes it's really, all I was able to do was, I'm not technical, all I was able to do is fill out the dialogue. Here's the order you should read the dialogue files in. And that's good enough for us to review it. And we look at it and go, oh, okay, well, this person's kind of understands the concept.
So, I mean, what was your background before that? Were you doing, like, theater stuff?
I was a closet writer. I just kind of enjoyed it from a big reader and just loved doing it. And I think I grew up with the mentality, so if you've got this mentality, tell it to go away. But my mentality was, it's like, I'm never going to make money at writing. I can't make a living at making video games. Somebody does that sort of thing. And after trying a whole bunch of other things, from running my own business to working for the man and all that, I said, man, I'm sick of this. So one day I just said, I'm going to submit something to BioWare. Who knows what'll happen? I submitted, and here I am, 6 years later.